Okay, today is December 7th, 1987. This is Joe Todd, an interview with Mr. Joe Lawter in Oklahoma City. Mr. Lawter, where were you born?
I was born in Oklahoma, at Weatherford, Oklahoma. I only lived out there about 6 months, and I moved into Oklahoma City, and I've been there ever since.
Yeah. When's your birthday?
May 12th, 1921.
1921.
Yeah.
Who was your father?
Zeb, Z-E-B, Lawter, L-A-W-T-E-R.
Okay. And your mother?
My mother's name was Frances Ellen.
Last name is Owen?
Ellen.
Ellen.
That's a middle name.
Oh, okay.
And last name was Harrell, H-A-R-R-A-L-L.
Okay. And were they both from Oklahoma?
Well, they came here. My mother was a homesteader that came from Missouri, and my dad came from Illinois here.
Mm-hmm.
Early on, very early. My mother was a homesteader, and my dad was, he came right afterwards.
So your mother was a homesteader?
Yeah.
Where did she have the claim?
In the triangle, you know, Custer City and Thomas and Weatherford, about right in the middle of that.
Okay. And how large was the homestead that she had?
Well, her dad had it
Her dad had
actually
it, okay.
160 acres.
Okay. And what was his name?
Henry.
Henry Harrell. Now, was that part of the opening of, when was that land open?
Apache, I think.
Okay.
Arapaho, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. Was that 1901 when that was opened?
They came earlier than that. They came in the 1800s, I think.
And why did the family move to Oklahoma City?
My dad was Secretary-Treasurer of the Farmers Union for about 40 years, and he came over for that.
And what part of town did you live in the 20s?
Well, I lived in Main and Klein, and right where the Farmers Union building is today.
And where did you start school?
Well, I started school at Franklin Elementary, and then I went to Roosevelt Junior High, and I went to Central High School.
And you graduated in what year?
39.
1939.
I later came back as principal of that school from 60 to 68.
What was Oklahoma City like in the late 20s and 30s?
Well, a lot different it is now. They had a lot of activity downtown. All the big stores had chains down there. And the biggest store downtown, one of the biggest was Katz at Main and Robinson. And they had electric rail cars, and it was an interesting town then.
What did you do for recreation in those years when you were in high school?
Well, I threw papers from the time I was 11 or 12 off Station A, which is located behind the old Oklahoma Publishing Building at 4th and Broadway. And mostly we went to show. We occasionally would get with other boys and some girls and would date. We'd just go out on town where we could. Mostly a big part of it, nothing.
After high school, what'd you do?
After high school, I joined the Marines, and I was at Pearl Harbor about a year and a half after I joined.
Where'd you go to boot camp?
I went to San Diego.
Tell me about boot camp.
Boot camp was rough in those days. these sergeants in charge were really mean, uh, to try to get you to be a tough Marine. They had to be tough, and they knew it. And I respect them today, but in those days it was tougher than they are now.
Why'd you join the Marines?
Well, I had been delivering papers since I was 11 or 12, and I went through 1 year of college at Central State when I went in. And I was tired of the throwing papers, basically, and I thought it'd be good.
Yeah. Any reason why the Marines over the Army or the Navy or?
I don't know, it's glamorous, and mostly, and I saw the blue uniforms and I went in.
And boot camp lasted how long?
Oh, let's see. It seems like it was about 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
hmm
And from boot camp, where'd you go?
I went to the Marine Band. I played the violin for the uh, band at orchestra that played for the officers, and they shipped me out over in the band, told me to learn the instrument. I naturally picked the biggest instrument I could find, which was a piccolo. And I don't know, I just marched around with them mostly, and I played in the for the officers' dances and that type of thing.
How long had you studied music?
Well, I studied music until I went in the Marines basically, and when I decided I'd get out of the band, so I told them I'd do anything, get out, because I didn't see I was going to play in the violin for them for the rest of my life. I couldn't see it, so they told me to learn the bugle, and so that's when they shipped me out. And besides, I'd go seagull on the bugler, and I wasn't tall enough to go seagull, and you had to be 5'8".
Now, Marine Band, that wasn't the band in Washington, was
Oh no, that was a band in San Diego.
it? Okay. Well, say the Marine Band in Washington, that's a prestigious.
Yeah, well, that band out there was good too. We played in the Rose Bowl parade first year I was in.
You ever try out for the Marine Band, the President's Own?
No.
So, you became a bugler and you went to sea?
Yeah, I went on to Oklahoma about, I guess it was about February or March of 41.
And where'd you go on board the?
Well, I went over on the ship, and while I was going over, it came back, and typical foul up, and then I went over again, and I boarded at Honolulu.
So
I went over on the Yorktown when I went back. That was an experience.
That's the aircraft carrier, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
How big is that carrier? The Yorktown?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I just a passenger on it, but it's fascinating to watch the planes land and take off from
the
the
Yorktown
ship.
was sunk.
I think later in the war it was.
Midway or Coral Sea?
It was one of those battles out there. It was
Yeah.
After Pearl Harbor, I was assigned to a task force in the casual company at Maui.
Did you have any? Of course, the war was going on in Europe.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea that when we'd become involved in the war?
Well, you had to live in those days to know this, but I was sure we was going to get involved in the war. And it was a matter of time until we did. And Roosevelt at that time was talking about peace, but he couldn't keep it up. I knew he couldn't. I didn't think he could. And I think we were attacked at Pearl Harbor, and they thought it'd be a little skirmish and not much to it. It turned out to be a major catastrophe.
Did you think that we'd be attacked by the Germans or Japanese?
Japanese.
Japanese. Now, I remember, was it Billy Mitchell or something?
Yeah.
Described that there would be an attack at Pearl Harbor.
That's
described
right. they had a book out that described that almost perfectly. Uh, about a month or maybe 3 weeks before Pearl Harbor, we were warned of possible the engagement, and the officers didn't know what to do with it. And we didn't either. It seemed peaceful enough to us. And we were called together in general quarters and warned that there might be some danger over in Pearl Harbor. But it's so peaceful in Pearl that you don't think too much about it.
Okay, before the attack, what was your average day at the Oklahoma?
Oh, being a person that gave the calls, a bugler. There was a Navy bugler on the Oklahoma too. There's two of us, and we kind of, he and I would spend time up around the officer decks most of the time, and we were different from the rest of them. And I'd go down and clean the offices for the Oklahoma. That was my job, and I'd clean it up, and then the rest of the day I'd usually be on duty for the calls that went out on the ship.
You ever clean the silver?
I can't remember cleaning the silver, but I understand it's here now.
Yeah, it's down here in the hall.
Yeah.
Where was
But I'll tell you one thing I did do. You know the anchor that's downtown? I chipped that anchor.
You did?
Sure, that was my job, was to chip the anchor. They'd sign different things for you, and you'd dry dock for you to.
Now, what do you mean by chipping the anchor?
Well, we'd go in there and chip it, and then paint it.
Oh, you chip the paint off and repaint it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's painted a battleship gray. Was that the color it was painted?
It probably was near that.
Yeah. Where was your quarters on the ship?
Well, it's been so long ago. It seemed to me like it was midship, and then about second deck down. But I wasn't down there anyway, so it's immaterial. And I don't know anything about it. I don't remember where it was exactly, but it was near there, midship, and about 2 decks down. I came back on the Oklahoma later when they rolled it over, and I went down there in my locker, and the only thing that was in good that was in my locker was a ring, my class ring, and I gave it to the school down here, Central High School. They have it now.
What were you doing on December 6th, Saturday?
Well, I think we were at sea, and we all came in there that day on December 6th. We were berthing for the ship, as I recall.
And did you go on Liberty that night, December 6th?
No.
You stayed on the ship?
Yeah, I had to do
Okay. What duty did you have?
bugler.
Bugler.
Yeah, I see. The Navy usually and I would alternate between us the duty of bugler and sounding the calls. And I believe that I had the duty, but if I hadn't had the duty, I was still in there because unless you first class or better, you didn't get leave.
What do you mean first class?
Oh, first class is about a sergeant or platoon sergeant. And Navy, third class would be about a sergeant or platoon sergeant. And we didn't get liberty at night there. We could go until midnight, and then we'd have to be on back ship.
And did you have a hammock or a bunk on the ship?
I had a bunk.
Mr. Copeland said he had a hammock.
Is that right?
Third deck down.
Yeah, I imagine he did. They treated us a little different being Marines on the board ship.
What was Well, why was the treatment different between the Marines and the Navy?
Oh, I don't know. It, of course, the chiefs they had beds, and some of the first class people had beds, and it makes a difference. I imagine that guy at Hugo was a seaman,
Mm-hmm.
and we had to stand duty day and night,
Yeah.
and I imagine they gave us bunks for that reason. I don't know.
Why were there Marines assigned to the ships, the battleships?
Well, the Marines is the same as the policemen on board the ship,
Oh, they are.
and they're assigned to all major ships in the Navy. Aircraft carriers, cruisers, and battleships all had Marine compartments.
So, tell me, December 7th.
Okay.
Start from the time you got up. What happened?
Well, I got up. You have to
At
know
what time?
You have to know the. I imagine I got up about 6:30. I'm not sure. Whenever it's Sunday, they don't have first call and reveille because they get to sleep in that day. And I don't think I sounded any of those calls. I usually did. But when it comes to the flag, it's a little different. You sound first call at 5 minutes till 8, and you sound uh, uh, colors at 8 o'clock. And I knew we had a Navy, whoever's on duty, Marines that came out and stood guard over the colors, and behind the colors why they had the bugler, and I sound that call. Well, I don't recall sounding anything that morning at all. Um, but I do remember sounding first call. That's 5 minutes till 8. And that's a regular thing. Everybody does that on board a major ship, as the Marines are. I sounded the first call, and I looked up in about 2 or 3 minutes, and I said to the corporal on guard, I said, "Those are Japanese planes." And the corporal on guard said to me, "This is truth." He said, "Lawter, you're paid to blow, not think." And I said, "Well, they're Japanese planes." And about that time, we got hit in the side with a torpedo. And we got about, I never did sound the colors at the 8. So the attack came 2 or 3 minutes before 8. I knew that. And so I went back to the intercom system that they have on board ship, and I was supposed to sound general quarters. But I said to the boatswain mate who blows the little whistle, uh, and I sound the colors. I mean the general quarters. I said, "Go ahead and tell him." And so he said, general quarters, and this is no blank blank.
Go ahead.
General quarters, and this is no bullshit. He said that. And that probably saved more lives on the Oklahoma than anything because you wouldn't dare say that if you didn't mean it. And I never did get general quarters sounded. The boatswain mate kept repeating that, and I think that was wise for him to do it. Well, my duty was with the captain, Captain Foy. I was his orderly, but the captain I knew was not on board ship. He was ashore that day. And Commander Kenworthy, who was the exec, was in charge of the ship. You probably know his names. And I went and found him. And he went up down the deck, and he was starting to slope over on the torpedo.
How many torpedoes did it take?
Yeah, somewhere around 6 or 8. And I said to him, "I think we better get off this ship." And he says, "That's right. We're going to pass the word to abandon the ship." And so that's when we abandoned the ship. And I went over to the side of the ship. You have to remember, I crawled almost. And I took off my clothes, all my skivvies, I took the bugle and threw it as far as I could throw it. And out in the ocean, and I jumped, just slid into the water. And when I slid into the water, I started swimming to Maryland, which we were tied up to. And I went over, while I was in the water, the Arizona blowed up. And you could see it, everything was in the air. And the water was on fire. And I was able to go down. I was a good swimmer then. And I got over to Maryland, and I guess about 8:15. I would measure it's about right. Got on board the ship there.
How'd you get on board the Maryland?
They pulled me over. The sailors.
How far from the deck to the water line?
Oh, it was probably 25 feet, maybe.
What, they have ropes or ladders? Or?
Yeah, they threw over the side, and we were able to crawl up on deck. But I got up on the deck in my skivvies, you remember, that's all I had. And I got up on deck. It might have been 8:20 or 8:25, I don't know exact time. We didn't have time to look at watches. And I decided to shoot I'd train on a 5-inch gun. We shoot the planes with a 5-inch guns. Well, you got about one chance in nothing. About one chance in 1,000 ever hitting a plane with those 5-inch shells. To this day, Honolulu thinks they were bombed. And you know what it was? It was the shells that we were shooting up, the planes, 5-inch shells going over and landing in Honolulu. And they later proved that the shells that came from the ships, and we were trying to shoot the planes down. We didn't have any luck shooting the planes down. And the Maryland got a hit up in the bow, as I recall. And I jumped over and swam across the channel to a submarine base. And I went out to ammunition ship and helping them load that. All in my skivvies.
What was your first reaction when you saw the Japanese planes? What did you think?
I'm not sure I was scared. You don't have time to be scared. If you you're going into battle someplace, you get scared.
Did you know that they were going to attack?
No, I didn't have any idea at all. And I don't think I got scared at all that day. I think I just, just reacted more than anything. And they tried to give her Purple Hearts for 2 or 3 days after that. They come around and talked to us and said, "You got scratched." Well, I got scratched on some glass. My foot stepped on some glass and I got a little scratch there. But that's all. And I wouldn't take a Purple Heart for that. And that's pretty much it.
When the torpedo first went off, the first torpedo,
Yeah.
then what were you thinking?
Well, I'm pretty sure we was being bombed. I wasn't sure at that stage. I was pretty sure because the Japanese, you have to remember, the fantails on the aft of the ship where we put the flag, we had the Marine Guard and then me behind it. Well, when they came out here in the channel and dropped the torpedo, they came up over our honor guard. And you could see the Japanese in the plane. So I was pretty sure that it was the Japanese. And then we kept we were right to you have to know that, how it lays to know that. But the channel, they could lay their torpedoes in the channel, they'd go right to Oklahoma. And that's why.
Yeah.
That's the war.
Now, on the Oklahoma, the attack was just a few minutes before 8.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that you had sounded first call.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the ship, how do you normally sound first call? Is
5 minutes to 8.
5 minutes till 8.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are you familiar with this photograph?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. That's what this is about. This is the
Okay. They said that.
submarine base here.
Yeah, they said this water spout is off the Oklahoma right here.
Right
and that's
here.
the plane that dropped the torpedo.
Now, actually, see, it came in this channel and hit the Oklahoma.
Okay. If I could get you. Man.
Okay.
I'm wondering if you could you point out exactly how the Japanese planes came over?
Well, they came across the harbor there, the submarine base harbor, and they come in that way.
Yeah.
And they come right at the ship. At the ship, and then they pull up and drop their. They later come second round with the bombs. Let's see this map there.
Okay, now this is Pearl Harbor here.
Oh yeah.
Now, which direction do the airplanes come from?
I'm not sure.
Now, I was told they came down this way through this valley.
I think they did.
Because here's Schofield Barracks.
I think they did. And they came down through there and they come around there and hit those ships that way.
Now, the second one I have.
I wouldn't know that because I wasn't there. Yeah, that's the one I knew. Yeah.
You familiar with that?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. You tell me what happened.
Well, the ships, the planes come here and they drop their bombs right in here. And then they jumped up there and you could see them after they dropped their bombs. And the Maryland's over here we flew in. This is West Virginia and Tennessee. And Vestal, yeah, Arizona, that's it there. And Nevada. Well, you need there.
Okay, now which direction
And
did
there was a battleship over in the dry dock someplace, Pennsylvania. Where's it at? Well, anyway, I thought there was. I guess it was one of the cruisers that's in there. Okay.
Yes, it is, but it's on down here.
Yeah.
That's in Pennsylvania right there.
I see.
It's just off the map.
That reason I know that Pennsylvania was in there, I went up there in Crow's Nest at night, Pearl Harbor, and they put me in the Crow's Nest, and the planes flew in backwards to what they're doing. They're supposed to do it, and we shot them down. And they was off through Yorktown or some aircraft carrier.
Now, how did the airplanes actually approach the ships?
I thought they came this way. Like that. That's the way I thought they came at you.
And do you know what happened on the Arizona?
Well, I don't know except what I read, and that is, it got lucky heading down the smokestack and that stuff. I was in the water when it happened, when it blowed up, and I was somewhere right between the ships. This ship rolled over, and I went over to Maryland. They pulled me out, and while I was in the water, the Arizona blew up.
What did that feel like when it blew up?
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's see. It raised you up out of the water. It didn't raise you out of the water. It made a swell in the water.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like it, and then you just, it's like a big wave. when the water comes up, it was here, and then the next thing you knew, it was way up there somewhere. And explosion, it was enough to raise the tidal wave of the ocean.
Okay. So you went over to Ford's Island.
I'm pretty sure that they came in this way. They must have come down that, I don't know this, but I assume that they come down this way and then turned and went at it that way.
Okay.
And some of the ships that went over here where the dry dock was area, and the Pennsylvania's down here.
How many ships were completely destroyed?
Well, I think all the ships, all the battleships were eventually put out of commission for a while. I know the Oklahoma Rollover and the Maryland, they got the California, it was a beast. The West Virginia and Tennessee got bomb hits and torpedoes too. The Arizona blew up, and Nevada came out here and started out, and they decided that they couldn't make it, so they beached it to keep from bottling up the canal.
So what's the first thing you remember doing after the attack?
Well, you have to remember, all this was almost during the attack. I jumped off the ship here and I shouldn't tell this. I hope you don't tell it, but instead of me swimming over here, I swam over here like it needed.
Why?
I don't know. Crazy. And of course there was debris on the water and everything, and I swam over here. And they picked me up somewhere out there, I guess.
How far is that?
Oh, probably 3/4 of a mile or a mile. 3/4 of a mile, I guess. I was a good swimmer in those days. I could really swim. And I know that the Oklahoma here, they on their maps that they had, the Japanese had here, they showed this as an aircraft carrier, and they blew it out of the water. They thought it was aircraft carrier because the Oklahoma on the back had a half deck type arrangement, and they just blew it out of the water. Well, all the aircraft carriers stayed out that for an extra day for some reason. I don't know about the Navy command and why and that kind of thing. I was a peon, you might say, in those days. That's her map. I'd like to have that map. Where'd you get that?
Yeah, we can. I got it out of this book, Day of Infamy.
That's a good map.
But I can get you a copy of it.
Well, if you think about it, you might send it to me.
Okay.
That's a good map, and which really shows that I gave that speech to a lot of high school students on Pearl Harbor, and I had to make a map up by myself and show it. And I think they came down the valley. They had to come down the valley and twist around and go at ships that way.
Okay, so whenever you saw the Oklahoma Rollover,
Yeah.
what were your thoughts?
Well, I thought they'd get us all, to tell you the truth. I went over to Maryland. And the Maryland, when I got over to that ship, hadn't had a hit yet because it didn't come in with the second wave. First wave was torpedoes, and the second wave was the bombing. But they sure got it the second time. They got the bow and the after somewhere there. They got it. And I got a little scared, I guess, and I jumped over the side and swam across the channel, which is dumb, forward of it dumb. I could have easily had a guy grab me about halfway across, a big black guy, and he almost drowned me.
How come he grabbed you?
Well, he's panicking. He got out there and he panicked. And, I might tell you that for day or two after Pearl Harbor, I was assigned to the chaplain, and they had three chaplains. They had a Jewish and a Catholic and a Protestant. And I was assigned to them, and I picked up bodies off the floated up the top. And I didn't know who they belonged to. I just took them in. And then later I had a mass burial, and they hunted up the bugle, and I was assigned to that duty for about, I guess 4 or 5 days.
Now, what does a bugler do when you have a burial?
Well, they have taps, usually. They say a few words. The ministers would, they talk, three of them in Japanese, in Jewish faith and in Protestant faith and Catholic faith. And then they have taps and then they bury them. But I'm sure they didn't know who they were in some cases. But I wasn't there to question anything. I just did what they tell me.
Did you think the Japanese were going to invade?
I thought they were. They could have taken that on and easy if they had the troops. If they'd had 40,000 troops, for example, it could take them. We were so disorganized there.
Why didn't they invade?
Well, they didn't know they was going to be that effective. They didn't know they'd get all the bombs, and they'd sink all the ships and everything. And that was the last. Well, I shouldn't say that. The Missouri's still over here. But they used to think in those days that the battleship was unsinkable, kind of like the Titanic was. And they proved that the battleship would just sink just like the others with the aerial attacks that they had. And they transferred from battleships to aircraft carriers after that. And they were a lot more effective.
No.
We had ships on the battleships. We had observation planes.
How were those launched?
Well, they had a sled, and they'd throw it over the side, and they'd take the big cranes and lift them over the side, and then they'd take off either by themselves, because they had a pontoon and they were slow. And then they'd get them back. They'd have a sled with a trailed kind of rope affair, and they'd snag onto them and pull them on there on the sled, then pick them up. But and they'd torpedo them sometimes. They had a torpedo. They sometimes launch them with the torpedo. But battleships in 1941, they pretty much this proved that they couldn't do it. It's obsolete then.
How much armor did those ships have on?
Oh, about 6 inches, 6 to 7 inches, depending on where you were. But it looked like a lot. 6 inches of pure steel.
Oh, yeah.
But if you don't put the airtight doors to it, why it...
Were all the airtight doors open?
Yeah, sure.
Why?
Oh, it's open, and you're not under alert. And they set some watertight doors that probably kill some people afterwards. They'll let the guys get out, and before they set their airtight doors. You knew about the postman that they, what ship was that they went on? Anyway, they went down and cut through the, I guess it was Oklahoma, yeah it was. And they cut through that steel to get to that postman down there, and he's about half crazy when it got to him. But he's all right. He's eating some bread and stuff. And set the airtight doors and crossed in would be below the deck.
Yeah, I understand.
I was going to tell you this. It's kind of ironic. I once went back over there after 40 years and after 45 years. That was last year and 5 years before that. The Japanese, they couldn't beat us, using instruments of war. There's no way it's going to beat us. But you go back there now and they beat us with money. They own all the hotels, they own everything. It's kind of sad for a person like me to have fought them. And now they practically own it. But there again, they got a right to do that. They did it legal, they did it right, and I don't fault them for it. I fault the United States for not taking the action necessary to stop that kind of stuff, but I don't fault them.
Now, what part of the ship were you on when you were gonna?
I was midship before the sound of the first call.
The midship, that's in the middle of the ship.
Mm-hmm. That's where the officer deck is, and that's where all the ships would come up there. They'd come up right there, and they would drop the guys on liberty, and they's mostly officers, and they'd come alongside, and the officer deck was I think he was an ensign, if I'm not mistaken, the Lord. And I hung around there most of the time in case he needed me.
Yeah. So that morning, when you blew first call, where at on the ship were you? What part of the ship?
I was right back here on the tail end, fantail, back as far back as you can go.
So that's pointing to the West Virginia there.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And the flag was driving after part of the ship. And they're running the flag up, and that's way for colors,
So the attack is over, and you said that you did some work on an ammunition ship?
I went out and unloaded an ammunition ship in the afternoon. It was way out here someplace. It was isolated. They wanted volunteers, so I went out there. I wish I had them.
Why?
Well, they come along and blow you to kingdom come, that's why. But anyway, after we helped unload the ship, they brought us back, and the volunteers, they asked for volunteers to go up on the Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania machine gun nest up in the top of the ship, and that's where I was. And I got some clothes there, finally.
So how long did it take for the Navy, I guess, to get reorganized?
Well, it depends on what you mean by reorganized. And that next day, or that day, very day, the Chicago, I don't see it there. I think it's around the other side. Got together a task force made up of a couple of sub chasers or destroyers, and they had a captain on the Chicago was Eager Beaver, and he started chasing them, and he chased the Japanese all the way halfway back, and he got out there and he got run out of oil and decided he better come back. That isn't organized, so that's stupid in my books. For a cruiser and a couple of destroyers to go after the Japanese fleet, that's crazy. I would say, as far as the battleships are concerned, they never did to get organized on them. But they got organized around aircraft carriers like that.
Why were the aircraft carriers out?
I don't know. For some reason, they didn't come in that day. You'll have to ask somebody higher up than me. I don't know. I wondered that several times why the aircraft carriers didn't come in, but they didn't come in that day. There was two of them out there. There was the Yorktown and the Enterprise, I think. And there might have been a third one, I'm not sure. But they spotted the little bitty subs before they ever came in there in Pearl Harbor, and they thought they was crazy, and they just started radar and all that, and they thought they was crazy too. And then it had a warning. It's fantastic. To me, they had so much warning and so little done about it.
What warnings did they have?
Well, they told us 3 weeks before that there might be a chance of this. Told us to stay alert, but the officers out there didn't know what to do.
Do you think Roosevelt knew about the attack?
You want my personal opinion? Yeah. I think that Roosevelt knew he was going to be attacked, and he was glad to have it to get us in war. But he probably thought they might get a ship out in the ocean or something of that nature. Never dreamed that they'd be able to pull what they pulled in Pearl Harbor. There's a book about it, told all about it. And it's fascinating that it could happen.
So, what ship were you assigned to then?
Well, I wasn't assigned to ship. I was assigned to a casual company. And a casual company goes where they tell you to go. And I went over to Midway later with the casual company and just went over there and stayed a day or two and come back.
To Midway?
Midway Island. But mostly I spent in Pearl Harbor on Maui.
Was that before the Battle of Midway?
They sent us over about 2 or 3 days before Midway. They sent us over there and they put us in machine guns nests around the island, and it was a battle of the aircraft carriers. And they got all the planes there at Midway, practically all. They got them right away. And I never knew too much about Midway except that they signed me out way out in the boondocks, and that's about all. Came and got us. They left us out there 2 weeks. We fired a plane or two, but that's too far away. I don't know very little about Midway.
So what did you do then for the rest of the war?
Well, I stayed on Maui most of the time, and they started an air station now on Midway, Maui, which is part of the Hawaiian Islands. They started an air station. I stayed there until I had twice as many points to come back to the States as I should have. And I finally pointed it out to them, and they sent me back. And when I came back to the States, they put me in the 5th Division of 26th Marines. And I told that colonel, if he wanted me, you better sure lock me up. I was going to go over the hill. And the colonel sent me to Officers Kansas School, and I was in Officers Kansas School when the war was over.
What did you do on VE and VJ Day?
Well, I was in Officers Kansas School on VE Day, and I can't remember too much about that. I was in the hospital in those days, and I don't remember too much about that. To tell you the truth. VJ Day, they gave us a discharge before that came about.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
In the front of the Skirting Hotel.
Is the wheel up here?
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay, the wheel is...
And I spent a lot of time together on the board ship. He's from Arkansas, and he's a great storyteller.
What's this wheel used for? What was the purpose of this?
Well, I'll tell you the truth, I think it was emergency mostly. That they had an electronic wheel, and they used it. Well, I had my but I still think you're a good person.
30 years you worked your best.
Of course, I knew Jane Lawter. Her dad was the superintendent of school at New York.
Yeah.
And I knew him then. And I've known Jane before she was Miss America. I liked her.
She's a very nice person. She is
She
very
was very,
nice.
very good.
Let's go back to Pearl Harbor then.
Okay.
What was the day like that morning?
Well, it was, it was typical lazy Sunday morning up until the attack at Pearl Harbor. It was all the officers, not half the officers, I assume, had leave, and half of the top enlisted me, the chiefs of first class this week. And they could spend overnight, and they were ashore. And we get out there blazing, whatever, and we found a rugby on our ship. It was a good one. Mostly I was assigned to the Austin Jack. And I hung around there and I did whatever you want to do. So first call in the Navy, it goes at 5 minutes to late. And I assigned the first call for the flag to go up. And then the flag goes up, Invade. I looked up there about 2 or 3 minutes till, and the Japanese plane was going over the after part of the deck, and I looked up and I said, those are Japanese, I think. About 30 seconds why we less than that. We got a bomb hit, which is the torpedo first, and then everything was like that. Rolled over. We probably got the 16 about 5 or 6 hits there in the shoulder at the time. And I went out and chased down the commander, who was Commander Kingwood, who was in charge of the ship. Captain Floyd was captain of each shore. And Commander Kingwood, obviously going to we later passed over to the ship.
Then what'd you do?
Would you tell her what the man told you when you saw the Japanese plane?
What did the man tell you?
He told me that the buglers were supposed to blow, not think.
That's what he said, huh?
Well, that's all I did.
Good thing you were thinking, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It later proved that way, and after the attack, I went back to Kingworthy, who was the commander of the ship, and then was in charge, and we passed the word to abandon the ship. And I took all my clothes and slid in the water. While I was in the water, the Arizona blew a big swell of water came up there. You knew that. They pulled me in off to Maryland and we shot Army shells. Mostly landed in Honolulu and then today was bombed and shot.
Is it important for the rest of us who don't remember that day, like you do, to remember it?
I think it's terribly important because of what has happened in the islands now. The Japanese, and I give credit to the Japanese, I don't dislike them for it. You've got to give them credit for a resourceful people. It couldn't be this using the conventional war weapons, even knocking us out of Pearl Harbor almost. If they'd had 40,000 troops, 30, 40, or 50,000 troops had taken those arms. But they didn't think that the attack would be like it was. And the Japanese now own a big part of the islands. And I was over there last year, and 5 years ago, and the Japanese own it as well. We're all practically.
Is that wrong?
No, I think they're terribly resourceful. And I don't think it can bother a really thinking person. If you want to get emotional about it, you could say they couldn't beat us. with the war weapons that come on the beach of the money problem. To me, that's using your hand. And I guess I could be mad maybe, but I don't, because I believe they've done it right this one. We ain't done it for that one good, but they did it.
Do you think you'll ever forget that day?
No, it's a day that you don't forget easily. I spent about a week as a bugler along with the three chaplains picking up bodies and legs and arms and flag and burying them. You don't forget that. And I sounded taps for the chaplains who buried the dead there. And you don't forget that next week because the attack happened so sudden that you didn't have time to be scared to react. And the reason that you react rather than scared, there's no time. You don't have time. You just do what you're supposed to do. On the Oklahoma, I didn't tell him, but I'll tell you. They went to get the ammunition, it was locked up. They went to get the life preservers, they locked up. Everything was locked up. Well, that's the way it should have been. But it didn't help us that day. And by the time I got to Maryland, they did. Okay?
Well, you'll stay right there. She's gonna take some pictures of us talking, okay?
Okay.
You know, I've thought about it a lot. You look around on any old Sunday and everybody's either in church where they're certainly not, they're not organized. You know, we're not ready for
That's
anything.
right.
On a Saturday, some people are still working and we're not that. But
I
on
think-
Sundays, everybody's either laying on their couch or they're.
Well, Sunday, that's right. And Sunday is a day to rest. It was typical of us to be resting. It was no discredit to the people there. They were doing exactly right.
Did you lose a lot of buddies that day, I guess?
Well,
Or had you been assigned to the ship that long?
what happens to you in the military, they spread you out to different casualties. You lose contact with them.
That's his what?
U.S.S. Oklahoma.
Oh, great.
But I lost somebody Saturday.
I'm sure.
I try not to dwell on it. They were much too much.
Yeah. Did you go back out to the Arizona when you went back out there?
Oh, yeah, we went
That's
on
pretty
to
impressive.
Arizona, and I have a flag that they raised over there at home,
How nice.
which is a chummy, and we occasionally put it out.
Yeah.
And I went out to the punch bowl, I think they call it now, and they have a very impressive ceremony of what the on the Central East.
That's nice.
And it's different over there now with me.
Oh, I bet.
Oh yeah, it's commercialized now, and then it was a lot of fun.
The strangest to me when I was there was that they take you into that film theater
Yeah.
first, and there you sit, and half of the crowd is American and half is Japanese.
That's right.
And it's very weird,
They're watching.
and it must be especially strange for you.
Well, it is strange, but I thought a lot about it. At first, that doesn't mean that.
Yeah?
But then you get to thinking about it, and it's been real social, like everybody
That's
else.
a good attitude to use.
Yeah, I think so.
Hi.
Hello. Tell her whenever the captain said to call general quarters, what happened?
Oh, it wasn't the captain, it was
It
the
was-
officer of deck. He told us, I come running back there after we got our first attack on Pearl Harbor, and told me we better sound general quarters. And so they both made him close that whistle for him. He went back there, and I told him to go ahead and get the bugle call. And he said, General quarters, and this is no black light. General quarters, he probably saved several lives.
Probably, yeah. You gotta let them know. Send them
they
Of
know.
course, you figure when you hear that bomb go off,
Yeah, that's true.
how many were lost in the U.S.S?
I don't know.
500?
About 480, just under 500.
About a fourth of them.
Yeah.
There was about a third of them, I think, it
Yeah.
was on shore.
The official number I read was 485.
Yeah.
You know,
That's probably about right. It was about 1,800.
And was it a battleship or was it, what was it?
Battleship.
A battleship.
They are obsolete then, and they're obsolete.
there's a photograph over here of it.
The Oklahoma, I want to tell you about the Oklahoma. It's the only ship that went through 2 wars, World War I and World War II, and never started.
I'm sorry.
And got